Okay, hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. It is Friday, February 7th, 2025. I'm just a professor trying to provide you with context in the war in Ukraine. And what just happened yesterday is that the Ukrainians have punched a hole into the Russian lines in Russia, and they have been advancing. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. 1,340 Russians off the battlefield day over day. That's kind of low. It's even not the high for the week here since February began, and that brings it up to 1,268 as an average for the month of February so far, which is still below the fourth highest month. So the numbers are still pretty low for casualties, and there's been this dip here lately. 10 tanks off the battlefield, 18 armored fighting vehicles, 32 artillery systems, 96 vehicles and fuel tanks, and one air defense system. So if you want to see like an air defense system, Arc 1 Lynx artillery radar system, that might be what we're talking about, that was hit yesterday. Now there was 112 Shahed drones launched, 81 were shot down, 31 suppressed by electronic warfare. So there's really no evidence of it hit this building here or that apartment complex there or whatever. Now, I've been talking about the momentum shifting for the last couple of days. It really has, but I wasn't even anticipating what was happening in Kursk. And now what happened in Kursk was a whole different thing than the numbers dropping. But the British intelligence update is showing me that the numbers actually are dropping, like I've been saying. Okay, January 2025, Russia's territorial advances in Ukraine slowed as they took approximately 320 square kilometers compared to approximately 400 in December. So 320 in January, 400 in December, and then there was 700 in November. So it keeps declining. So what I'm showing you is actually happening in fact. And you can see that intensity dropping in Kursk, which had 28 assaults yesterday, but it was like 60 plus for a number of days just 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's turn our attention to Kursk because this is the big story. So here's a reported HIMARS strike on a Russian command post in the Kursk region. Here's the before and there's the after. I'm not showing the actual video, but wow, it's no longer there. Okay, Zelensky's evening speech. Zelensky thanked Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi for planning the Kursk operation, emphasizing its historical and diplomatic significance for Ukraine. Now, when you think about diplomatic significance, a week from now, they'll be meeting with negotiators at Munich. Well, Keith Kellogg and whoever else is going to be there. I believe the Secretary of Defense is going to be there. The new Secretary of Defense, I believe JD Vance is going to be there. So they're showing that they have something going on here. The Ukrainian offensive in Kursk region, Russian Federation, is ongoing. Armed forces of Ukraine have expelled Putin regime forces southeast of Sudzha. So here's Sudzha, and just going southeast, that's the way that they're moving into this, or punching this hole through the Russian lines. And this is verified. So here is a Russian mill blogger, Romanov, with a map updated in Kursk region, pretty much in line with our own map. And you see it's going southeast. That's where the Ukrainian military is moving. Again, southeast of Sudzha, another map. And here's another map that shows you like all the contested territory is in the gray, and just southeast of Sudzha is where the action has been. So it's interesting to see what they're actually been able to do. 1,500 Russian civilians are stuck in border areas captured by Ukraine. So Kyiv is ready to open a humanitarian corridor and let them out. Russian channels are slightly more critical of the current state of affairs in Kursk. I don't recommend, this is a quote here from one of the Russian channels, quote, "I don't recommend relying on the information of the political officers and who denied the facts of the enemy's presence in Sudzha. Then they will tell everyone that it was a special operation. I can only advise you to be patient and pray for our guys." Okay, that's one. Now, there are other reports, and I'm going to show you another one in just a moment here as well. Pro-Russian military bloggers acknowledge that Ukrainian tactical gains have happened, stating that Kyiv's forces have penetrated Russian defensive lines by up to 5 kilometers. That's a lot for one day, and it's the significance is really that it's in Russian territory a week before they're going to meet in Munich. Now, a number of Russian Z bloggers are talking about this operational defeat of the Russian army in Sutsa direction, Kursk region of Russia yesterday. So, the Battle of Kursk 2.0, a number of commanders continue to write a history of lies. This is a quote from the Z bloggers. So, on February 6, 2025, the command of the Russian Armed Forces group suffered operational defeat. They said this: it's the fault of the Russian armed forces that yesterday the enemy improved their position in the Kursk region. And it's very possible that today he will continue to improve its positions, and our command to cover up yet another lies of the previous months will start to push soldiers forward without training, increasing losses. So they're not happy about this, but they're actually kind of telling the truth because they're not trying to create propaganda like the Russian Ministry of Defense generally does. Okay, so the Russia's 11th Brigade commander was dismissed as a consequence of what was happening yesterday. And here's the ISW just giving a quick summary. Russia's offensive campaign assessment of February 6, 2025, Ukrainian forces launched a new series of battalion-sized mechanized assaults in Kursk Oblast and advanced up to 5 kilometers behind Russian lines southeast of Sutsa. Now, the ISW recently noted that Russian military command has gathered around 78,000 troops, including 11,000 North Koreans, that's just around the Kursk region, in order to defend Kursk and keep this exactly what happened from happening. And elements of Russia's most elite VDV and naval infantry formations to expel Ukrainian forces from Kursk Oblast. And remember, the time to expel it was supposed to be February 1st, and then before that, the deadline was back in October, and both deadlines have come and gone. So that's what's going on with Kursk. Now, Anton Goroshenko boasted this: what do you know? The AFU bypassed the Akhmat unit again. Otherwise, they would have repelled the attack, Aludinov says, but they were unable to. Let's read a little bit about this. The Akhmat Special Forces, or any Akhmat unit, is not there, unfortunately, because I think that the enemy learned a very good lesson from what they did when they went in the direction of Akhmat Special Forces and chose a place where they could strike so that our units were not there. Of course, that's the primary motivation for the Ukrainian, is to avoid this guy. Okay. Darth Putin said, my latest nuclear bluff includes Russia nuking itself. I remain a master strategist. Well, he's referring to this Forbes article where Russia may have launched a second Orishnik ballistic missile at Ukraine, but this one reportedly exploded on Russian soil. Well, that was the original article. And then eventually we found out that the claims that Russia launched an Orishnik missile at Kyiv on February 6, but exploded in Russia, was reported by Forbes, was based on speculations from a blogger named Kirilo Sazonov, not on verified facts. And so ultimately, and the unverified claim that prompted the chief of Forbes Ukraine to apologize because they didn't really have it together. But that's what legitimate journalists do. There's a fog of war, and then legitimate journalists will make it right if they get something wrong. And so good on Forbes for taking that back. Now, this is some bad journalism, right? On February 6th, Daily Mail published a piece rewritten by a journalist, Perkin Amaladraj, who used a 10-day-old article with no author or source written by a scandalous pro-Russian media outlet and bizarrely managed to add his own lies, essentially coming up with Trump's peace plan and revising it and adding something to it. And then it was published in the Daily Mail. It was weird. That's not good journalism. Good journalism makes sure that it shows you and verifies its facts and cites its sources. Okay. 1 year ago, Ukraine shot down a Russian A-50, an airborne early warning system. And the commentator says here, and this is commentary, I'm old enough to remember that the Bidenists claimed that it was a friendly fire and incident and dismissed Ukrainian ingenuity. Now, I'm showing you that because of what's coming next here. And now, first, let me also add that, I wouldn't call him a Bidenist or say something like that. You don't need to be derogatory as you're saying things. We heard originally that it was friendly fire, and that's what was reported, and we're trying to understand things through the fog of war. But here's what actually just happened. Ukrainian Armed Forces Colonel Nikolai Dziman has been sentenced in absentia to life imprisonment in Russia in the case of the destruction of the A-50 reconnaissance aircraft. Okay, so this is according to Mediazona. Earlier, the Russian authorities admitted that in February 2024, the Ukrainian armed forces shot down an A-50 flying radar, which led to the death of 10 crew members. So it's pretty clear that Ukraine did it at this point. Okay, Azerbaijan sends another batch of aid to Ukraine, including 1 million worth of electrical equipment. The equipment is intended to help restore power infrastructure in areas damaged by Russian strikes. But wait a minute, isn't Azerbaijan like a friend of Russia? Well, it has been until recently. Now they're pretty ticked. Earlier, Azerbaijan, despite being an ally of the Kremlin, announced that it plans to file a lawsuit in an international order to hold Russia accountable for the shoot down of the Azal passenger plane over Aktau. Okay, so that's what's motivating that. Ukraine has received F-16 jets from the Kingdom of the Netherlands, so thank you to the Netherlands for that. And the UK is rapidly developing new naval drones for Ukraine. The UK Defense Procurement Minister mentioned WASP and SAPR unmanned maritime vessel programs as undergoing final testing. So everybody's learning lessons from what's going on in Ukraine. And speaking of lessons, here is something interesting. Fiber optics ground drone made in Ukraine. Yeah, that's like a water bottle at the back of it that will unleash the spool of the fiber optic cable. Now, in my estimation, the fiber optic drones on the ground are going to be much more perilous than fiber optic drones in the air. Yeah, the fiber optic can catch on trees in the air, but on the ground, it just seems like so many more bad things that can happen to it. But if you're trying to make this work, that's a pretty ingenious way of doing what you're doing to put that spool through that water container. So, all right, that's all that I have, my friends. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.